He Yangju spent tens of millions to stage a citywide proposal for his white moonlight, and it firmly topped the trending searches. GU Corporation Medical's stock plunged 12% in an hour. Every time he caused a scandal before, Ike, his fiancée, was the one who cleaned up the mess. But this time I walked into his office with my resignation letter and a notice of broken engagement, returning every piece of jewelry the He family had given me. He was certain I couldn't survive without him, but he didn't know at 8:30 in the morning, I had just walked into the Gushi Medical Headquarters building when the receptionist, pale-faced, rushed over clutching a tablet that was trembling in her hands. "President Su, you have to see the trending searches. Something's happened." I took the tablet. The top trending entry was blazingly red, He Yenjo's $1 million confession to Jiang Luoluo followed by an explosive tag. I tapped it and saw last night's video, on the facade of the CBD's most prosperous building, an entire wall's light show read, "Luoluo, my whole world, marry me," signed below by He Yangju. In the city center square he had rented out the whole space, filled it with 9,999 red roses, dropped to one knee, slipped a diamond ring onto Jiang Luoluo's finger, and bowed his head to kiss her. The video was full of the crowd's screams, and the comments section had already erupted. "Isn't He Yangju already engaged to Dr. Su Qingyuan? What is this, a public affair? My God." Dr. Su is the backbone of the GU Corporation. Without her patents GU would have collapsed long ago. Has He Yangju gone mad? Wasn't Jiang Luoluo his childhood sweetheart? After all these years, is she finally being promoted? I returned the tablet to the front desk, walked into the elevator with a blank expression, and pressed the button for the top floor. Inside, the group's executives kept their heads down. No one dared speak, stealing glances at me with peripheral vision. Their eyes were full of sympathy and the anxious anticipation of watching how I would handle this mess. After all, this wasn't He Yenjo's first time causing trouble. Over the past 5 years, he'd bought Jiang Luoluo luxury homes and sports cars, been photographed by paparazzi countless times, and each time I stepped forward to issue a statement, saying it was the group's commercial activity and promotional resources for a collaborating artist, constantly cleaning up his mess, steadying the stock price and reassuring investors. The whole industry knows that the foundation of Gushi Medical is the 3 world-first patents in my hands, the new drug I developed through tireless days and nights in the lab. Without me, what He Yangju holds in his hands is just an empty shell, but he never seems to understand that. The elevator doors opened, the top-floor CEO office door was ajar, and I could hear things being thrown and He Yenjo's explosive shouting from inside. I walked in to find the office in ruins. Papers scattered everywhere, a mug smashed on the floor, shards of glass splattered about. He Yangju sat behind the desk reeking of alcohol, his shirt unbuttoned, bloodshot eyes. When he saw me enter, he shot up, and instead of any hint of remorse, he barked at me impatiently. "Su Qingyuan, you're finally here. Didn't you see it trending? Handle it for me. Issue a statement saying last night's confession was the group's brand promotion, that Jiang Luoluo is our new brand ambassador. Hurry." His tone was naturally like he was commanding a servant. I stood still, didn't move, looked at him and spoke calmly. "He Yangju, the video of you and Jiang Luoluo kissing has spread all over the internet. Do you think anyone would believe me if I post a brand publicity statement? I don't care if others believe it." He Yangju slammed the table, stood up, pointed at my nose and shouted, "You're the company's chief R&D officer, you're my fiancé." The group's stock fell 12% in an hour. Market value evaporated by billions. If you don't handle it, who will? Didn't you always handle these things before? Before was before, now is now. I looked at him, took 2 documents out of my briefcase and put them on his desk. One was my resignation letter. I had already signed it, applying to resign from all positions as Vice President and Chief R&D Officer of GU Corporation Medical Group, effective immediately. The other was a notice of engagement termination. When He Yangju saw the 2 documents, the agitation on his face froze instantly. He was stunned for a few seconds, as if he couldn't believe his eyes, picked up the papers and flipped through them, then suddenly looked up at me, his expression full of bewilderment. "Su Qingyuan, What do you mean? It means I'm done. I looked at him and said each word clearly. From today on I'm leaving GU Corporation, and you and I are breaking off our engagement. After speaking, I placed a jewelry box on his desk, opened it. Inside were the engagement ring the He family had given me, the full set of jewelry, and all the expensive gifts he had given me over the years. I hadn't kept a single thing. I returned everything. He Yangju looked at the jewelry box, then at me, and suddenly laughed, the laugh full of scorn and certainty. Su Qingyuan, are you throwing a tantrum at me, just because I staged a confession ceremony for Luo Luo? He took a step forward, looking down at me with an air of superiority, his tone full of arrogance. Let me tell you, don't be shameless. Do you think once you leave GU Corporation and leave me your new drug will succeed? Do you think those investors recognize you? They recognize the GU platform. They recognize my name, He Yangju. Those patents in your hand, without GU's funding and without my resources, are just a pile of worthless paper. He reached out to pinch my chin, his voice coaxing. Now, tear up those 2 documents. Immediately release a statement to handle the trending searches, and I'll pretend today never happened, otherwise, you'll regret it. I stepped back to avoid his hand, looked at him and smiled. He Yangju, I will not regret it, the one who will regret is you. With that I turned and left without a moment's hesitation. When I walked out of the CEO's office, the executives outside crowded around, looking at me with anxious faces. President Su, please don't go. If you leave, what will happen to GU Corporation? President Su, President He just had a momentary lapse. Don't take it to heart. I looked at them and said calmly, I have already submitted my resignation letter. From now on I am no longer an employee of GU Corporation. Take care of yourselves. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, shutting out all the stairs and noise. I leaned against the elevator wall, watching the digits change, my face expressionless. He Yangju thought I was throwing a tantrum. Because of his confession ceremony, he thought I couldn't survive without him and without GU Corporation. What he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this day for 5 whole years. From the day he caused my father's death and seized GU Corporation, I had set this plan in motion. I joined GU, stayed by his side, even accepted his proposal, all for today. This citywide spectacle of a confession was merely the most natural pretext to close my net. He said I would be on my knees begging him back within 3 days. He will soon learn how horribly wrong he is. I drove back to my private laboratory. The lab is in a biomedical industrial park on the outskirts of the city. It's a standalone building I bought outright 5 years ago with the proceeds from selling my patent. It's equipped with a full set of research tools that meet international standards, my real ace. I had just opened the door when my assistant Lin she came up to meet me, her face drawn and her eyes red. Professor Su, you're back. Something happened. I put my bag on the cabinet in the entryway, changed my shoes, and asked, what is it? Tell me. Just now, someone from the Randi Center messaged me. Of the 12 people who stayed on in GU's Randi team, 7 have submitted resignation letters and have already packed up and left. Lin Shi's voice was tight with anger. They said President He offered them triple pay and promotions. He also told the whole industry's pharmaceutical companies that whoever hires our people or dares to cooperate with us is opposing GU Medical. I nodded without speaking. It was expected. He Yenjo's strongest weapon is using capital to crush others. He thinks that by poaching my people he can cut off my path. Lin she handed me another stack of emails, her expression even worse. Also, 5 CROs we used to work with and 2 clinical trial institutions have all sent emails saying they want to terminate all cooperation with us. They'll pay breach of contract penalties, but they don't dare to work with us anymore. They said President He called their bosses and warned that if they dare to cooperate with us, GU Medical will cancel all their orders. I flipped through the emails. They were from companies that had deep collaborations with GU, and out of deference to He Yenjo's orders they've ended their work with me. Still expected. Just then my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. On the other end was He Yenjo's voice, thick with mockery and certainty. Su Qingyuan, are you at the lab? Well, surprised, I leaned against my desk and said nothing. I told you. You'd regret this. He Yanyan's voice came through the receiver, full of control. Now your people are gone, your partner's all gone, your new drug Randy can't go on at all. Su Qingyuan, I'll give you one more chance. Come back to the group now with your resignation letter and the engagement termination notice. Apologize to me and to Luo Luo, and I'll return your people and your partnerships. Otherwise, I'll make sure you never see the light of day in the biopharma industry. He Yangju, I said. Evenly, do you really think my research can't continue without your GU Corporation? What else? He Yangju laughed. Su Qingyuan, your new drugs phase I clinical trial needs over 100 million. Without Gu's money, what will you burn? Do you think those investors will give money to someone with no platform and no resources? Don't be delusional, is that so? I smiled. Then you might be disappointed. Disappointed? His tone was full of contempt. Su Qingyuan, don't be shameless. I don't have the patience for your theatrics. Come apologize now and it's not too late. Otherwise, I'll freeze all your Randy funds in the group so you won't get a single cent. I stopped talking nonsense with him and hung up the phone, blocked the number, then opened my contacts and put He Yanzhou's WeChat, phone number, and all other contact details into the blacklist. Lin Shi stood nearby, anxious and flustered. Teacher Su, what do we do now? All our partners have withdrawn, half the people have left, our phase 2 clinical trial for the new drug is about to start. We have no money and no people. How can we manage? I looked up at her and asked, are you afraid? Lin Shi paused for a moment, then shook her head firmly and straightened her posture. I'm not afraid, Teacher Su. I've been by your side for 6 years. I know your capabilities. Even if the entire industry refuses to cooperate with us, I will stay with you. If they leave, that's their loss. I smiled and patted her shoulder. From the encrypted safe, I took out 2 documents and handed them to her. Take a look at this. Lin Shi took the documents, flipped one page, and her eyes widened instantly, her mouth opening as wide as it could, unable to speak for a long time. The first document is the project approval for the National Major New Drug Creation Program. My globally pioneering anti-tumor new drug project has officially been selected for a national-level program, with the supporting 120 million yuan development fund already deposited into the lab's corporate account. The second document is a docking letter from the National Medical Products Administration's Drug Evaluation Center, clearly designating my project as a priority-reviewed drug, fully opening a green channel, and domestic top-tier tertiary hospitals voluntarily applying to become my Phase 2 clinical trial institutions. Su, this is real. Lin Shi's hands were shaking. 120 million in earmarked funds, national level funding, I nodded. We began applying a year ago, and it was just approved last week. He Yangju thought my Randy depended on his GU company. He didn't know that his little money doesn't even deserve to polish shoes in front of a national-level fund. Lin Shi burst into tears, laughing through them. That's fantastic. Teacher Su, we don't have to fear him anymore. His little block can't do anything. Not only that, I handed her another list. These are the teams I contacted earlier, the country's top drug research groups, plus my father's old fellow disciples, all academicians at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. They've agreed to join our Randy project and will report to the lab tomorrow. Lin Shi took the list, her hands stopped trembling and her eyes shone like stars. Teacher Su, you had already anticipated He Yangju would play this card. I didn't answer. I just lifted my eyes to look at my father's photo on the lab wall. 5 years ago, my father, Su Zhenbang, founder of GU Medical and one of the country's leading biomedical scientists, had his new drug's core data leaked and sold to a rival company. 10 years of research were destroyed, the funding chain collapsed, and he was driven into a fatal heart attack in the lab. The day after my father's incident, He Yangju brought in capital and bought my father's shares in GU at a low price, becoming GU's chairman and turning my father's life's work into a tool for his profit. It took me 5 years to get into my father's alma mater, earn a PhD in biomedicine, bring my own patents into GU, and inch closer to He Yangju until he thought I was just a woman who lived in the lab, inexperienced and dependent on his platform, so he let his guard down and accepted my engagement. Over those 5 years I quietly collected evidence of him leaking my father's data, embezzling company assets, and operating illegally. I built my own R&D team bit by bit, applied for national-level funding step by step, and set this whole trap. His blocking of me today was entirely within my expectations, and this is only the beginning. I took out my phone and sent a message to Lee at the National Medical Products Administration, the person coordinating the special fund, asking if the start date for Phase 2 clinical trials had been set. Lee replied quickly, it could start next Monday. All hospital arrangements were in place. I sent an acknowledgement and put my phone down. She had already organized the documents and said excitedly, Teacher Sue, we'll start clinical trials next week. Let He Yang-ju see, he can't touch us at all. I nodded and stared out the window. He Yang-ju, did you think your block would make me bow? You are too naive. Next week, I'll show you that the core technology in my head is something you can never steal, and the capital you pride yourself on is powerless against absolute technological barriers. A week later, the National Pharmaceutical Industries Annual Summit was held at the International Convention and Exhibition Center. This summit is the highest profile event in the country's biopharmaceutical industry. Company owners, top scientists, and leaders from regulatory departments across the nation all attend. It's the most authoritative platform for industry exchange. I was an invited guest speaker. Originally I was scheduled to give a joint keynote with He Yang-ju representing GU Medical to share our new drug research achievements, but now that I'd resigned from GU, the organizers arranged a separate keynote for me, placed after He Yang-ju's. On the day of the summit, I arrived at the convention center on time with Lin Shi. The hall was packed. The front rows were filled with regulatory leaders, academicians from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and top industry experts. The back rows with heads of pharmaceutical companies, R&D staff, and a large number of journalists. I had just sat down when the people around me all looked over and began whispering, that must be Dr. Su Qingyuan, right? I heard she left the GU firm and also broke off her engagement with He Yang-ju. Isn't that something? Who could stand that public confession fiasco He Yang-ju staged? Dr. Su is the real deal. Without her, GU is nothing. I heard He Yang-ju blacklisted Dr. Su across the industry and cut off all her collaborations. I wonder if that's true. I kept a blank expression, sitting in my seat, flipping through the summit manual in my hand, as if I hadn't heard the discussion. Soon, the summit officially began. A few guests in front stepped onto the stage one by one to give speeches, all going smoothly. Finally, it was He Yang-ju's turn to speak. The host walked onto the stage, smiling, and said, now, with a round of applause, please welcome Mr. He Yang-ju, chairman of GU's Medical Group, to the stage for a speech. Today, he will share with us the latest development results in GU's Medical's anti-tumor new drug research. The crowd erupted in scattered applause. He Yang-ju wore a tailored suit with his hair slicked back, looking energetic as he walked to the podium, completely unrecognizable from the predicament a week earlier when the stock price had plummeted. He stood in front of the microphone, first bowing to the audience, then smiling and saying, ladies and gentlemen, leaders, experts, hello, I am He Yang-ju, chairman of GU's Medical. Today, I will share with you our company's independently developed, globally pioneering anti-tumor new drug project. This is a major achievement our research and development team spent 5 years and over $100 million to create. As soon as he finished speaking, the large screen behind displayed the drug's development data and patent information. All I had produced in the past 5 years, day and night in the lab. The audience watched the screen seriously, occasionally whispering among themselves. On stage, He Yang-ju spoke grandly about MY, claiming it all as GU's Group's credit, that he led the team who developed it, and throughout, he didn't mention my name at all. After a full 20 minutes, he shifted his tone, his gaze landing on me with a sinister and calculating look. Here, I must also report something to everyone. He Yang-ju held the microphone, his voice loud and clear, echoing through the entire venue. Our former chief R&D officer Su Qingyuan, by taking advantage of her position, stole the company's core, privately registered personal patents, seriously harming the company's interests. We have officially terminated Su Qingyuan and have filed litigation with the court. At the same time, we call on the entire industry to comprehensively blacklist Su Qingyuan for academic misconduct and theft of commercial secrets. As soon as he finished, the room erupted in an uproar. All eyes focused on me, the flashbulbs blazed, and reporters scrambled to take my photos. He Yangju stood on the stage, looking at me with a triumphant smile. He thought that by slapping me with the label of stealing business secrets and academic misconduct in front of the entire industry, even if I had patents, no one would believe me, no one would work with me, and my path would be completely ruined. He believed this would ruin me completely. The host panicked as well, hurrying onto the stage to smooth things over. At that moment, I stood up, tidied my suit jacket, and took my patent certificate, walking slowly onto the podium. The room instantly quieted, everyone holding their breath as they watched me. When He Yangju saw me on stage, his expression darkened, and he barked, "Su Qingyuan, what are you doing up here? This is not your place. Guards, remove her." 2 security guards tried to step forward, but I raised my hand to stop them. I stood at the microphone, looking at everyone in the audience, my voice clear, resounding through the venue via the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, leaders, experts, good day, I am Su Qingyuan. Just now, Mr. He Yangju said that I stole Gu's confidential information and registered personal patents. Here, I will show you something." I raised my hand, signaling Linchi to project my patent certificate onto the big screen behind us. On the screen, clearly appeared the invention patent certificates issued by the National Intellectual Property Office, 3 patents, with inventors and patent owners all listed as me, Su Qingyuan, with the filing dates 5 years ago, before I joined Gu's Medical. The room immediately buzzed again. I took the microphone and continued. These 3 core patents were developed and filed by me before I joined GU. The patent holder has been me personally from the start. Between me and GU Medical there is only a non-exclusive commercial license agreement. GU has only the right to use them, not ownership. So there's no question of me stealing the company's trade secrets. I paused, looked at He Yangju beside me, my gaze cold. "Mr. He, all the research results you mentioned in your speech were entirely based on my 3 core patents. Without my patents, Gu's new drug project would not exist at all. You accuse me of stealing the company's achievements. Tell me, aren't you ashamed to steal my patents, take them as your own, and brag about it to the whole industry?" His face flushed crimson instantly, pointing at me. He snapped, "You're lying. Even if the patents are in your name, you completed them while employed at GU using the company's resources. They're service inventions and belong to the company. Is that so?" I smiled, raised my hand, and another recording player interface appeared on the big screen. I pressed play. He Yangju's voice came through clearly in the recording. "Su Qingyuan, your lousy patents, if I hadn't invested in you, you wouldn't have developed them. Now I'm going to sell them to a foreign pharmaceutical company. You must sign to agree, otherwise don't expect to survive in this industry." There was also his conversation with the rival company boss, President Wang. "I can give you Su Qingyuan's core new drug data, but you must give me this amount. Also, you need to secure the overseas medical quota for Jiang Luoluo's brother for me." When the recordings finished, the whole venue erupted. Everyone looked at He Yangju with disdain and shock. Not only had he stolen my patents, he planned to sell core data to a competitor and even use that data to curry favor with his pet. In the biopharma industry, this is an intolerable line to cross and a serious legal and regulatory violation. He stood on stage, deathly pale and trembling all over, pointing at me but unable to utter a word. I looked at him and went on, "Mr. He, you just said you wanted the whole industry to blacklist me. I want to ask everyone here, what right does someone who brags by stealing others' patents and profits from leaking core R&D data have to call on the entire industry to blacklist the originators of those patents?" The audience burst into thunderous applause. Many experts stood and applauded. The drug regulatory leaders in the front row watched He Yangju with sullen faces and quietly issued orders to the staff beside them. He looked around at the room full of mocking gazes and the flashing cameras and realized he'd completely lost face and become a joke in the industry. He clenched his teeth, glared at me, then turned and fled the podium in disgrace. Rushing out of the conference hall, the host hurried onto the stage to restore order and smiled. "Thank you, Dr. Su Qingyuan, for the clarification. Next, please join me in a warm round of applause to welcome Dr. Su Qingyuan to deliver the keynote and share her world-first anti-tumor new drug research results." The applause that followed was even more enthusiastic, at least 10 times louder than what he had received. I stood at the microphone and began my presentation, explaining my new drug research and the clinical trial data in detail. Many of the technical breakthroughs addressed global-level problems in the field. The experts in the audience listened intently, nodding from time to time with evident approval. When I finished, the sustained applause lasted a full 5 minutes. After coming down from the stage, many pharmaceutical CEOs and heads of investment firms surrounded me, handing over business cards and eager to collaborate or invest in my project. She held a card, her hands trembling with excitement. "Teacher Su, you're amazing." Just now He Yanzhou's face went completely green. It was so satisfying. I smiled but said nothing. I knew He Yanzhou wouldn't let this rest. Today, in front of the whole industry, I had publicly embarrassed him and ruined his dignity. He would definitely seek revenge, and he would use more vicious methods. Sure enough, that very night I received news. After He Yanzhou returned, he trashed his entire office and loudly declared that he would make me pay, that he would interfere with my Phase 2 clinical trial, frame me for data fabrication, make my new drug utterly fail to get approval, destroy my reputation, and land me in prison. She was very worried and asked if we should beef up security at the trial sites. I nodded and said, yes, not only strengthen security, but back up all original clinical trial data multiple times, implement end-to-end monitoring with no blind spots, and have staff on duty 24 hours. She hurried to make the arrangements. I stood by the lab window, looking out at the night, holding my father's old notebook. "He Yanzhou, you want to tamper with my clinical trial. I foresaw this long ago. If you dare come, I dare make sure you don't return. This time I won't only humiliate you, I will make you personally send yourself to prison." My new drugs Phase 2 clinical trial started simultaneously at 3 top-tier domestic hospitals. To ensure the data's authenticity, completeness, and traceability, all trial procedures were strictly carried out according to GCP standards, raw data synchronized in real time to the National Medical Products Administration's clinical trial database, and surveillance with no blind spots installed at each hospital's trial site, with dedicated monitors following the process throughout. Half a month after the trial began, everything was going very smoothly. Enrolled patients tolerated the drug well, and preliminary efficacy data far exceeded expectations. That morning, as soon as I arrived at the lab, Dr. Zhong, who was in charge of trial monitoring, called me. His voice low and anxious. "Dr. Su, something's wrong. When we checked the trial data this morning, we found that the medication data for 3 subjects had been tampered with. Originally positive data were changed to negative, and 2 reports of serious adverse events were fabricated. They never actually happened." My brow tightened instantly. I asked, "When was the data altered? Can you trace the operation logs?" "We can trace it," Dr. Zhong said, "at around 2 in the morning yesterday. Someone logged into the system using the site data administrator's account and altered the data." Dr. Zhong continued, "I already asked the data administrator. His account password was missing for about half an hour yesterday afternoon in the office. He said a GU family medical representative came by, claiming to deliver collaboration materials. Looking back now, that was probably when his account and password were stolen. I understood immediately. It was He Yanzhou he wanted to tamper with my clinical trial data, fabricate serious adverse events, then report me to the regulatory authority, accusing my new drug of data falsification and posing serious safety risks. Once the Drug Regulatory Authority launches an investigation, my clinical trial will be immediately suspended, and the new drug approval will be postponed indefinitely. Even if it's eventually proven that the data were tampered with, my R&D timeline will still be delayed by years, or even completely terminated. In the biopharmaceutical industry, time is life, every day. Delayed on the market means countless patients who cannot wait for a life-saving drug. He Yang Ju's move is vicious and ruthless. He intends to destroy me and my new drug completely. Dr. Zhong was pacing anxiously on the phone. Dr. Su, what do we do now? Should we call the police immediately? Or report to the drug authority first? We will report to the police, of course, but not now, I said into the phone. Dr. Zhong, you must immediately archive and back up all original data, lock the system, and prevent anyone else from making changes. At the same time, take screenshots of the tampered records and preserve them. Act as if nothing has happened and don't publicize it. Dr. Su, you mean, if he could tamper once, he will definitely come back a second time, I said calmly. He only altered the data of 3 subjects so far. That's not enough. What he wants is to completely ruin my trial. He will come again to change more data or even destroy the originals. We'll wait here and catch him red-handed when he returns. Dr. Zhong immediately understood and said, Understood, Dr. Su, I've got it. I'll arrange it right away. After hanging up, I immediately called the security company and had them send 8 professional security personnel to add round-the-clock shifts guarding the clinical trial base's data center. At the same time, we installed 16 hidden pinhole cameras inside the data center, covering even the previous blind spots of the surveillance. I also contacted the hospital's IT department to add operational alerts to the data system so that if anyone logged into the system outside working hours or tampered with the data, my phone would receive an alarm immediately. Once everything was arranged, I took Lin Shi and rushed to the clinical trial base. When we arrived at the hospital, Dr. Zhong had already backed up all the original data and locked it in a safe. Dr. Su, everything is arranged. The data center's monitoring is fully on. The security personnel are in place. We're just waiting for him. I nodded, walked to the data center, and checked all the surveillance and security placements to confirm there were no loopholes. Lin Shi stood beside me, grinding her teeth. He Yangju is inhuman. This is a life-saving new drug. To get revenge on you he would stoop to this. He doesn't care about the patients at all. I said nothing, only stared at the data center's servers. He Yangju only ever cares about his own interests and never others' lives. Back then he killed my father to seize GU Corporation. Now, to get revenge on me, he's even dared to tamper with a life-saving drug. He has no bottom line. That night, Dr. Zhong, the security captain, and I waited in the hospital's surveillance room. After 1 in the morning, my phone suddenly received a system alarm. Someone had logged into the clinical trial data system outside work hours. I immediately looked at the monitor. At the data center's entrance, 2 men in hospital cleaning uniforms pried open the data center door, slipped inside, and headed straight to the server, opened the computer, and started logging into the data system, intending to tamper with more trial data. Take action, I whispered into the intercom. The security personnel stationed at the data center sprang into action, kicked the door open with a heavy kick, and shouted, "Don't move, police, hands up." The 2 men were startled. The USB drives in their hands dropped to the floor. Seeing the security team rush in, they tried to run, but were surrounded from front and back, forced to the ground, and immobilized. Dr. Zhong and I immediately walked into the data center. The 2 men lay on the ground, their faces pressed to the floor, and when they saw me come in, their faces turned pale. I stood in front of the computer, looking at the screen. They had already opened the data system, and were about to tamper with the core efficacy data. Beside the computer was a USB drive containing forged serious adverse event data. They were caught red-handed. I looked at them and asked, "Who sent you?" The 2 men lowered their heads and didn't speak. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and played a recording. It was a recording from yesterday of one of the men talking with He Yenjo's assistant, clearly stating the plan to tamper with clinical trial data, forge adverse events, report to the drug regulator, frame Su Qingyuan for data fabrication, and after success, pay them $1 million. I had the technicians monitor this yesterday. When the two men heard the recording, their faces turned pale and their legs went weak. I'll talk, one of them hurriedly spoke. It was He Yangju, from Goose Medical, who sent us. He told us to tamper with the trial data, forge adverse events, report your data fabrication. It's none of our business. We were just taking money to do a job. I nodded, signaling the security personnel to tie them up. Then I took out my phone and called the police. Half an hour later, the police arrived at the hospital, saw the crime discovered at the scene situation in the data center, along with the audio and video evidence, and immediately took the two men away. Before leaving, the police told me that the case involved interfering with drug clinical trials, providing false documents, and commercial defamation. They would file charges and begin an investigation, summoning the responsible parties. I handed all the evidence to the police early the next morning. The incident spread across the entire internet. The hashtag #GooseMedical suspected of interfering with new drug clinical trials, #He Yangju framed data fabrication exposed surged straight to the top of the hot search list, with over 1 billion views. Netizens were outraged, cursing He Yangju as ruthlessly calculating, willing to manipulate even life-saving new drugs for personal grudges, showing no humanity at all, and urged the authorities to investigate thoroughly. The National Medical Products Administration and the National Health Commission jointly issued a public notice, opening an investigation into Goose Medical, and suspended all of Goose Medical clinical trial projects, revoking their qualification as a clinical trial institution. Goose Medical's stock price plummeted again, hitting the limit down. Countless investors demanded withdrawals, and banks arrived to demand early loan repayments. He Yangju was utterly panicked. He never expected that. Not only did he fail to frame me, but he had dragged himself into the police's investigation. He frantically tried to use his connections to suppress the matter, only to find that the matter had already alarmed the National Medical Products Administration and the Ministry of Public Security, and no one dared help him cover it up. Moreover, during the investigation, the police uncovered several of Goose Medical's previous clinical trials, all involving data fabrication and illegal recruitment of subjects. With conclusive evidence, Lin Shi, holding her phone, said to me excitedly, "Teacher Sue, that's great. He Yangju is really done for this time. His clinical trial qualification has been revoked, all ongoing research projects have been halted, the GU Group's foundation has completely collapsed." I smiled but said nothing. I knew this was not enough. The evil He Yangju committed went far beyond this. The drug factories under him long produced and sold substandard drugs. His hospitals used unapproved medical devices in violation of regulations, harming countless patients. I will settle those accounts with him, one by one. From now on, I will let him lose, bit by bit, the things he cares about most: his money, his companies, his reputation, everything he prides himself on. I will crush them, bit by bit, completely. After He Yangju's clinical trial qualification was revoked, GU Medical's core business nearly ground to a halt. The only things left that could still make money for him were the generic drug factories under his control and a dozen or so high-end private hospitals. These were his last sources of cash flow and his final lifeline, but he did not know that I had long since seized leverage over that lifeline. Back when I was still employed at GU, I discovered that the drug factories under him, in order to cut costs, skimped on quality and produced substandard drugs that did not meet national standards, even reprocessing expired active pharmaceutical ingredients and producing and selling them again. His aesthetic medical hospitals were even more egregious, extensively using imported medical devices, hyaluronic acid, and botulinum toxin that had not been approved by the National Drug Regulatory Authority. Many were grey market or counterfeit products, causing irreversible harm to countless consumers. Many who sought to defend their rights were suppressed by his capital and connections. I documented all of these incidents and collected complete evidence. Now it was time to expose all this dirt. That morning, I brought all the organized evidence and my lawyer to the office of the Provincial Drug Administration's Inspection Brigade. The brigade chief received us. I placed the thick stack of evidence on his desk and said, "Chief Lee, I am here today to file a formal complaint against Minkang Pharmaceutical Co., Limited, a subsidiary of GU Medical Group, for the long-term production and sale of drugs that do not meet national standards, and to report that all aesthetic medical hospitals under GU Medical are using unapproved medical devices and drugs, in serious violation of the Drug Administration Law and the regulations on the supervision and administration of medical devices, endangering public health. Team leader Lee picked up the evidence and flipped through each piece, his expression growing darker and darker. Among the materials I gave him were Minkang Pharmaceuticals' internal production records and quality inspection reports, which clearly documented that several of their generic drugs failed to meet national standards in content measurement, contained excessive related substances, and even had been produced using expired active pharmaceutical ingredients. There were also testimonies and recordings from factory employees, sales ledgers, and records showing distribution to hospitals and pharmacies across the country, complete and incontrovertible evidence. There were also purchase orders and usage records from the aesthetic clinics under his group, large quantities of unapproved grey market medical devices and drugs, as well as consumers' rights protection records and injury assessment reports, all laid out clearly. After reviewing the evidence, team leader Lee slammed the table and said sternly, "This is lawlessness, treating people's lives and health like a game. Dr. Su, thank you for providing this evidence. We will immediately set up a special task force, file cases against Gushi Medical and Minkang Pharmaceutical, and show no leniency." That afternoon, the Provincial Drug Administration's Inspection Unit, together with the Public Security and Market Supervision Departments, mobilized over 100 law enforcement officers, forming more than a dozen action teams, and conducted night raids on Minkang Pharmaceutical and the dozen or so aesthetic clinics under the Gushi Group. I fully cooperated with the enforcement, accompanying officers to the factory's hidden substandard drug warehouses and the clinic's cold storage where grey market devices were kept. Officers seized hundreds of boxes of substandard drugs not meeting national standards, worth tens of millions, as well as large quantities of unapproved medical devices and aesthetic drugs, sealed off Minkang Pharmaceutical's production workshops on the spot, and shut down all of Gushi's aesthetic clinics that evening. The Provincial Drug Administration issued an official announcement reporting the actions taken against Minkang Pharmaceutical and Gushi Medical, explicitly stating that the relevant companies and responsible persons would be strictly and severely punished according to law, and that those suspected of criminal activity would be handed over to the public security organs for criminal investigation. The matter instantly exploded online. The topics #Gushi Pharmaceutical produces substandard drugs sealed and #Gushi aesthetic clinics use counterfeit goods shut down shot to the top of the trending list and went viral. Countless consumers and patients stood up, exposing how they were deceived and cheated at Goose hospitals. Some even revealed that after taking drugs produced by Goose Company, their conditions not only failed to improve but worsened, triggering severe adverse reactions. Netizens were furious, sharply condemning He Yangju as heartless, accusing him of caring only for profit at the expense of ordinary people's lives, and demanding harsh punishment, wanting him imprisoned for life. GU Medical's stock price suffered another epic crash, hitting the daily limit down for 3 consecutive sessions and wiping out over 90% of its market value. What had been a market cap in the tens of billions fell to under 1 billion, teetering on delisting. Large numbers of investors launched collective lawsuits demanding compensation for investment losses. Countless consumers also filed rights protection suits seeking damages for personal injuries, with total claimed compensation exceeding tens of billions. He Yangju was completely cornered. His drug factory was sealed, hospitals shut down, clinical trial qualifications revoked, and the company had no revenue sources. Every day people came to collect debts, and banks had applied to the court for asset preservation, freezing all assets under his name. He had only one card left to play. Those were my 3 core patents. He thought that if he could just sell my patents, he could get a large sum to fill the company's holes and turn things around to survive. What he didn't know was that I had long anticipated he would take this step. A week later, Lin Shi brought me news. He Yangju had contacted a large foreign pharmaceutical company and planned to sell my new drug patent to them for 500 million. They had already arranged to sign a letter of intent at the International Pharmaceutical Patent Licensing Conference in Shanghai. Lin Shi was shaking with anger. Teacher Su, he Yangju is shameless. The patent clearly belongs to you, and he actually dares to sell it to foreigners. How could he? I smiled, looked at Lin Shi, and said, he's already desperate. What wouldn't he dare? He thinks that by taking my patent documents he can impersonate the patent holder and sell the patent. Perfect, will give him a huge surprise at the conference. I immediately contacted my legal team and the patent agency, prepared all the patent proof documents, and also notified the China head of that foreign pharma company in advance. Lin Shi said excitedly, Teacher Su, this time we must make he Yangju pay dearly and suffer a total defeat. Let him know that if something isn't his, even if he steals it, he can't hold onto it. I nodded and looked out the window. He Yangju, you want to steal my patent and sell it to foreigners for money? You're far too naive. This time, I will not only make your deal fall through, but also make you bear a huge compensation so you can never recover. I'll make you learn what it means to try to steal a chicken and end up losing the axe handle. 3 days later, the International Pharmaceutical Patent Licensing Negotiation Conference would be held at the Shanghai International Convention Center. This negotiation is the largest patent licensing and trading platform in the global pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical companies and research institutions from around the world would converge to negotiate patents and collaborations. He Yangju booked the largest VIP negotiating room in the conference and even invited a large number of media reporters, hoping to make this patent licensing scene appear grand and to prove to the outside world that Goose Medical has the capital to turn things around and to stabilize investors and creditors. He thought this conference would be his comeback game. He didn't know that this was the grave I prepared for him, leading him into the abyss. I arrived at the conference venue ahead of time with the legal team, sitting in the adjacent negotiating room, listening to the activity next door. In the neighboring room, voices were loud. He Yangju's voice seeped through the wall, unconcealed with self-satisfaction, bragging to the negotiating team of foreign pharmaceutical companies about how powerful my patent is and how vast the market prospect is. Ladies and gentlemen, this globally pioneering anti-tumor new drug patent is Goose Medical's core asset. Once, annual sales will reach at least 5 billion. Absolutely a blockbuster product. For this time, we only need 500 million yuan to grant you exclusive overseas rights. Absolutely a guaranteed profitable deal, the head of the foreign pharmaceutical companies negotiation team asked. Mr. He, could you provide the complete ownership proof of this patent? We need to confirm that you are the legitimate patent owner and have the authority to grant licenses. Of course, he Yangju replied with a smile. We've long prepared for this. I heard that, nodded to the lawyer beside me. The lawyer stood up, straightened his suit, pushed open the door to the neighboring meeting room, and I followed him in, walking slowly. The meeting room was full. The negotiation team from the foreign pharmaceutical company sat opposite. He Yangju occupied the main seat, flanked by lawyers and senior executives, and a large number of reporters holding cameras were taking pictures. Seeing me enter, the smile on He Yangju's face froze instantly. He sprang to his feet and shouted harshly, Su Qingyuan, what are you doing here? Who let you in? Security, get her out. I ignored him and walked straight to the negotiation table, looking at the head of the foreign pharmaceutical company across from me. I said in fluent English, Hello everyone, I am Su Qingyuan, the sole and lawful patent holder of the 3 invention patents you are negotiating to license today. Mr. He Yangju is not a patent holder and has not received any authorization from me. He has no right to authorize or transfer this patent in any form. All his actions today constitute commercial fraud. No sooner had I finished than the room erupted into uproar. The foreign pharmaceutical negotiation team's expressions changed in an instant as they looked sharply at He Yangju. The reporters went wild, their cameras snapping non-stop, flashes lighting up the room. He Yangju's face turned deathly pale. Pointing at me, he barked, "Su Qingyuan, you're talking nonsense. These patents are employee inventions of Goose Medical and belong to the company. I am the chairman of the company, so of course I have the right to authorize them." "Really?" I smiled and signaled my lawyer. Distributing the patent certificate and ownership documents to everyone present, including the negotiation team from a foreign pharmaceutical company and the journalists. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take a look. This is the invention patent certificate issued by the National Intellectual Property Administration. It clearly states that the patent holder is me, Su Qingyuan. The filing date was before I joined Goose Medical, and it has nothing to do with Goose Medical. I also produced the patent licensing agreement I signed with Goose Medical and said, this is the only agreement I signed with Goose Medical, only a non-exclusive domestic commercialization license. Goose Medical has no rights to authorize overseas licensing, let alone transfer or sell this patent. Mr. He Yangju, you are holding my patent today and negotiating licensing with foreign pharmaceutical companies. Do you have my authorization letter?" He Yangju stood there, trembling all over, unable to say a word for a long time. He didn't have my authorization letter at all. He hadn't even sorted out the complete ownership of the patent. Yet he dared to carry my patent information to negotiate licensing with foreign companies, trying to extort 500 million in licensing fees. The China regional head of the foreign company looked at the patent certificate in his hand, his face turning ashen in an instant, and coldly said to He Yangju, "Mr. He, you are suspected of commercial fraud. We will immediately terminate all negotiations with you. At the same time, we will report you to the relevant Chinese authorities and reserve the right to pursue legal responsibility." After saying that, he stood up, led his negotiation team, and turned to leave. The journalists immediately swarmed in, thrusting microphones in front of He Yangju and firing questions non-stop. "Mr. He, are you really impersonating the patent holder and committing commercial fraud? Mr. He, at industry summits you claimed the patent belonged to Goose Medical. Now exposed on the spot, what do you have to say? Mr. He, Goose Medical is teetering on bankruptcy. Are you trying to swindle a payout and run?" He Yangju was surrounded by reporters, his face pale, trembling all over, unable to utter a word, completely at a loss. I looked at him and, in front of everyone present, calmly said, "To all media friends here, I formally announce that regarding He Yangju and Goose Medical, without my permission, using my patent, impersonating the patent holder to authorize commercial licensing, I have filed a patent infringement lawsuit with the Beijing Intellectual Property Court, demanding that He Yangju and Goose Medical cease all infringing activities and compensate me for economic losses totaling 1 billion yuan. The court has formally accepted the case and issued a pre-trial preservation ruling, freezing all bank accounts and assets under Goose Medical and He Yangju." As soon as I finished speaking, the venue erupted again. The claim of 1 billion yuan set a new record for domestic pharmaceutical patent infringement claims. He Yangju's eyes rolled, his legs buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, nearly fainting. Journalists' cameras turned on him, snapping away rapidly. The next day, the topic Heinzhou commercial fraud caught in the act, Su Qingyuan sues Heinzhou for 10B climbed to the top of the hot search list, flooding the entire internet. Netizens clapped and cheered, cursing He Yangju for stealing someone else's patent and trying to sell it to foreigners, saying it was a disgrace abroad and he should be made to pay until bankruptcy. The court's pre-trial preservation order took effect, freezing all assets under Goose Medical and He Yangju's name, including the villa he lived in and the car he drove. He was completely penniless and had nowhere to turn. Lin Shi, holding her phone, excitedly told me, "Professor Su, great news. He Yangju is done for this time. All his assets are frozen. The 1 billion claim, even if he sells Goose Medical, he can't pay it back." I smiled, saying nothing. I knew He Yangju would not simply surrender. He would surely have his most trusted white moonlight Jiang Luoluo come beg me for mercy, even come steal my core data, and this gave me an opportunity to obtain more evidence of his crimes. I had long foreseen that Jiang Luoluo would be the last straw to break He Yangju. Sure enough, things went just as I expected. A week later, Jiang Luoluo found my laboratory. That afternoon I was in the lab reviewing clinical trial data when Lin Shi came in, looking very pale and saying, "Professor Su, Jiang Luoluo is here, in the lobby. Downstairs, she says she wants to see you and apologize." I raised an eyebrow, set down the data report in my hand, and said, "Have her come up." Lin Shi froze for a moment and said, "Professor Su, why would you see her? She's definitely sent by He Yangju. She means no good." "I know," I smiled and said, "since she came, I ought to see her and find out what she intends. It's convenient, I also have something to say to her." Lin Shi nodded and turned to leave. A few minutes later, Jiang Luoluo was led into my office. She wore a white dress, without makeup on her face. Her eyes were red and swollen like walnuts, her hair in disarray, looking far more haggard, completely devoid of the pampered air He Yangju had once lavished on her. She saw me and immediately burst into tears. Then with a thud knelt in front of me. "Suyen sister, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I apologize to you. Please forgive me and Xian Ji." I sat in the office chair, looked at her, and said calmly, "Get up, I won't fall for this. If you have something to say it standing." Jiang Luoluo remained kneeling on the floor, refusing to get up, crying, "Suyen sister, I know, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Xian Ji wouldn't have come to this with you, and the Jiyu family wouldn't have become what it is now. Please have mercy and spare Xian Ji. Whatever money you want, we'll give it to you. Whatever conditions you want, we'll agree to them. Let him go." I smiled and looked at her. Jiang Luoluo, He Yangju manufactured and sold inferior drugs, harmed countless patients, interfered with my clinical trials, tried to frame me for data falsification, and impersonated my patent holder to commit commercial fraud. These are criminal acts. It's not something that will be settled just because I let him go. The law won't let him go. No, it's not like that, Jiang Luoluo hurriedly said. None of these things were done by Xian Ji. It was the people under him. It has nothing to do with him, sister. Su Yang, I'm begging you, for the sake of our past, please let him go. For the sake of our past. I raised an eyebrow and looked at her. What past do you and I have? What past do He Yangju and I have? I stood up, walked to her, looked at her, and said word by word, "Jiang Luoluo, stop acting in front of me. You're not here to apologize. He Yangju sent you to pretend to plead on his behalf and to steal the core data of my new drug from my computer, right?" Jiang Luoluo's face instantly drained of color. She jerked her head up and stared at me, terror written all over her eyes, as if she couldn't believe I knew her purpose. Her hand instinctively clenched the bag she had with her. Inside was a miniature USB drive and a hidden camera device, what He Yangju had given her to copy the core data from my computer while I wasn't looking. I watched her actions and smiled. "Stop hiding it, I know what's in your bag. Didn't He Yangju tell you that if you get my core data, he can take back the patent, turn things around, keep giving you money, and pay for your brother's treatment?" Jiang Luoluo's lips trembled. She couldn't speak for a long time, and her tears fell faster. "Sister Su Yang, I didn't do it on purpose. I had no choice. My brother's illness needs money for treatment." "Your brother's illness?" I looked at her, my tone icy. "Jiang Luoluo, do you know He Yangju sold your brother's overseas medical slot to someone else long ago? Your brother's appointment was cancelled. He's been lying to you. He never intended to get your brother treated. He was just using you." Jiang Luoluo suddenly lifted her head and stared at me, disbelief all over her face. "No, impossible. Xian Ji told me it's been arranged. That next month he would take my brother abroad for surgery. You're lying to me, lying to you." I smiled, took out my phone, opened an email, and handed it to her. "This is the reply from that overseas hospital. It clearly states that your brother's treatment slot was transferred by He Yangju to someone else a month ago. And he took 200,000 from that person. See for yourself." Jiang Luoluo took my phone with trembling hands. After reading the email, she froze completely. The phone clattered to the ground. Her face was as white as paper, her eyes hollow, and she kept muttering, "Impossible, impossible. He lied to me. He actually lied to me. He didn't just deceive you about your brother's medical slot," I said as I looked at her. He prepared an entire set of materials to pin all the crimes, leaking trade secrets, producing and selling inferior drugs, commercial fraud onto you. He told his lawyer that if things came to light, they'd say you ordered him to do everything, that you're the mastermind and he was just deceived by you. Once he gets the money, he'll abandon you and run. He won't care about you or your brother at all. I handed her the chat logs between He Yangju and his lawyer. These weren't something Jiang Luoluo handed over after switching sides, these were the logs I had obtained earlier through technical means. They clearly stated that Jiang Luoluo should take the fall. After reading the chat logs, Jiang Luoluo completely broke down and slumped to the ground, wailing uncontrollably. She loved He Yangju for so many years. For him, she bore the blame of being the other woman. For him, she even dared to offend me and do those heinous things. In the end, she was just a tool He Yangju used. Once he was done with her, he was ready to throw her away and let her take the fall. Even her brother's only chance at salvation was sold out by him. She cried for more than 10 minutes, then finally stopped, lifted her head, and looked at me with eyes full of resentment and resolve. She wiped her tears, stood up from the ground, looked at me, and spoke word by word. Sister Su Yang, I'll help you. I want He Yangju to pay the price. She opened her bag, took out a phone and an external hard drive, and handed them to me. Inside here are all of He Yangju's criminal evidences. Jiang Luoluo's voice was steady, filled with deep hatred, recordings and chat logs of him trading Randi data with competitor companies, internal meeting records of his production and sale of substandard drugs, bank statements showing embezzlement of the listed company's funds, the entire set of books proving his financial fraud. It's all here. Also, the matter of him causing your father's death. He got drunk back then and confessed the whole thing to me. I recorded it, and that's here too. My heart jolted as I took the external hard drive. What I had searched for 5 years, the truth about my father's death, was finally in my hands. I looked at Jiang Luoluo and nodded. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you. Jiang Luoluo gave a bitter little laugh. I'm doing it for myself, for my brother. He Yangju destroyed everything of mine, so I'm going to make him fall into eternal ruin. With that, she turned and walked out of my office. Lin Shi came in, looked at Jiang Luoluo's back, and stared in astonishment. Teacher Su, this, she switched sides just like that. I looked at the external hard drive in my hand and nodded. He Yangju, you would never have imagined that the woman you favored most would personally deliver you into the abyss. You ruined an engagement, your reputation, and your career for her. In the end, the one to deal you the fatal blow is also her. This is your deserved retribution, and I, holding this complete set of evidence, can finally crush your last hope completely. The deluded plan you'd been preparing for privatization and to abscond with the money. It's time to wake up. After receiving the evidence Jiang Luoluo gave me, I spent 3 days organizing, classifying, and verifying all of it, forming a complete, ironclad chain of evidence. It contained not only full proof of He Yangju's financial fraud, embezzlement of the listed company's funds, and disclosure violations, but also a recording of him leaking my father's Randi data years ago, which led to my father's Randi failure and fatal heart attack. This evidence is enough to send He Yangju to prison for life. At that moment He Yangju was having his last sweet dream. He knew GU Group Medical had come to the end of the road, its stock price had plunged, it faced delisting, and creditors were knocking every day. His only way out was to privatize the listed company and delist it, then strip the company's core assets, pocket the remaining money, and flee abroad. He had been preparing this delisting plan for a long time, having engaged a private equity firm to buy out retail shareholders' stock at a low price to complete the privatization. He believed that once delisted he would escape regulation, be able to hollow out the assets, and run off carefree. What he did not know was that I had long since set up an impenetrable net and was just waiting for him to fall into it. His delisting hearing was scheduled for Friday morning in the Securities Exchange's conference room. Once the hearing passed, his privatization and delisting plan could move to the next step. On Friday morning I arrived at the exchange punctually with staff from the CSRC, the stock exchange, and my team of lawyers, carrying a complete set of evidence. The hearing room door was open and it was packed. He Yangju, with his lawyers, the sponsor team, and the head of the private equity firm, sat on one side of the table, high-spirited, presenting his privatization and delisting proposal to the review committee members. When he saw me enter, the smile on his face froze. He jumped to his feet and barked, "Su Qingyuan, what are you doing here? This is a hearing on a listed company's regulation, not your place. Security, throw her out." I ignored him and walked straight to the table, presented my credentials and a thick stack of evidence to the chair of the review committee. "Members of the review committee, hello, I am Su Qingyuan. I am here today to report that GU Group Medical has committed serious financial fraud during its listing period, including overstating revenue, misappropriating listed company funds, and major violations in information disclosure. It does not meet the conditions for privatization and delisting, and has seriously violated provisions of the securities law." The moment I finished, the room erupted. The faces of the review committee members darkened instantly. He Yangju lunged over, trying to snatch the documents from my hand, shouting, "Su Qingyuan, don't slander me here. My company has no problems. This is a malicious report. I'll sue you." Two CSRC staffers stepped forward and blocked him, saying coldly, "Mr. He, please calm down and do not obstruct our work." I distributed the evidence in my hand, piece by piece, to each review committee member and the CSRC staff present. "Members, here are GU Group Medical's true financials for the past 3 years, compared with the financial statements they disclosed. Externally, the discrepancy is glaring. Over the past 3 years, GU Group Medical inflated revenue by more than 3 billion yuan and overstated profits by over 1-2 billion yuan, fabricated more than 30 false sales and project contracts. The evidence of financial fraud is unmistakable." I then took out another stack of documents and continued, "Here is the complete proof of GU Group Medical's fund flows. Over the past 3 years, He Yangju abused his position to misappropriate more than 15 billion yuan of the listed company's funds. 800 million yuan was directly transferred to Jiang Luoluo's personal account to buy her luxury homes, sports cars, and designer goods, and a large amount was moved to overseas personal accounts. All of this is backed by complete bank transaction records." I paused, then continued, "At the same time, GU's Medical has been officially investigated by the Drug Administration and the Public Security Bureau for producing and selling substandard drugs, interfering with clinical drug trials, and commercial fraud. The company's core assets have been sealed. It faces lawsuits seeking over 10 billion in compensation, and it has major operational and delisting risks. All of these significant matters were completely concealed by GU's Medical in its delisting application materials. No information was disclosed at all, which is a serious violation of disclosure regulations." The review committee members held the documents and read them one by one, their faces growing increasingly grave. He Yangju stood where he was, ashen and trembling. He hadn't expected me to have such complete evidence of his financial fraud, down to every transfer he'd made to Jiang Luoluo. The sponsor institution's team saw the evidence and panicked instantly, turning pale and hastily explaining to the committee members that they had been unaware and had been deceived by GU's Medical and He Yangju. The chair of the review committee, after reading all the evidence, looked up and stared at He Yangju with a cold gaze, saying sternly, "Mr. He, do you have any explanation for these illegal and irregular acts by you and GU's Medical?" He Yangju's lips trembled and he couldn't speak for a long time. With such irrefutable evidence, no explanation would help. The chair set the documents down and said solemnly to everyone, "Based on the evidence submitted by the whistleblower, GU's Medical Group committed serious financial fraud and major disclosure violations during its listing. The company also faces significant illegal operational risks and does not meet the conditions for a privatization delisting. I hereby announce the immediate termination of this privatization delisting hearing, and GU's Medical's delisting application is rejected." He paused, then added, "At the same time, regarding GU's Medical's suspected financial fraud and violations of the securities law, The CSRC will formally open an investigation and impose strict and severe penalties, investigations into the related intermediary. Institutions will also be launched to pursue joint liabilities. The gavel fell. When He Yangju heard this, his legs went weak and he collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. His long-nurtured delisting dream had been utterly shattered in that moment, leaving nothing. That afternoon the CSRC issued an official announcement that it had formally opened a case against Goose Medical for suspected disclosure violations. The stock exchange also announced the initiation of a major illegal forced delisting procedure against Goose Medical and suspended trading immediately. As soon as the news broke, the whole internet erupted. Countless retail investors were furious and launched collective lawsuits demanding compensation from Goose Medical and He Yangju for their investment losses. With total claims exceeding 20 billion, banks and creditors filed suits seeking repayment and bankruptcy liquidation. Goose Medical had reached the end of the road. Bankruptcy and liquidation were only a matter of time. He Yangju went from a billionaire chairman of a listed company to a heavily indebted suspect under formal investigation by the CSRC, falling from the clouds into hell. Lin Shi, holding her phone, excitedly told me, "Teacher Su, wonderful. He Yangju's delisting dream is completely crushed. Goose is about to be forcibly delisted. He really can't recover this time." I smiled and shook my head. Not yet. He Yangju is the sort of man who won't give up until the very end. Even at this point he would likely take desperate measures and mount one last frantic counterattack. He would surely think that since he's cornered, he might as well go all out, try to destroy me, and erase all the evidence. I had anticipated this. I had already made arrangements and was just waiting for him to fall into the trap. Sure enough, 3 days later my head of security called to say several unfamiliar men had been loitering near the lab, acting suspiciously and casing the place, even figuring out my commute and schedule. I answered the phone calmly, understood, increase security, and immediately call the police and explain the situation to them. I suspect He Yangju is going to come after me. I know He Yangju's final madness is coming. This time, I will make sure he has no chance to recover. From that day on, my security level was raised to the highest. The security team replanned my commuting routes, arranged a dedicated car and close bodyguards, and installed top-tier security systems at both the laboratory and my residential complex, with personnel on duty 24 hours a day. At the same time, I informed the local police station of the possibility that He Yangju might target me. The police took it very seriously and assigned dedicated officers to follow up on the matter. Placing plainclothes police along my commute routes, I knew He Yangju had completely lost his mind. He is now penniless, his company bankrupt, facing forced delisting and multiple criminal investigations, and could be arrested at any time. His only thought is to take revenge on me, to destroy me, even to kill me and eliminate all evidence. He believes that as long as I'm dead, no one can testify against him. He has lost every scruple and is capable of anything. One night a week later, I worked in the lab until after 1 a.m. Before finishing and preparing to leave, Lin Shi urged me to stay overnight in the lab's lounge and not to go home in the middle of the night. It's too dangerous. I shook my head and said, "It's fine. Security has been arranged and the police are deployed. If he dares to come, we'll catch him red-handed." I knew He Yangju had been staking out near the lab for days. He would definitely choose to make his move when I got off work in the early morning. I intended to give him that chance. With 2 bodyguards at my side, I left the lab building and headed for the underground parking garage. The lighting in the garage was dim, and it was so quiet we could only hear our footsteps. My car was parked at the far end of the garage. The 2 bodyguards walked ahead, alertly scanning the surroundings. When we were still a dozen meters from the car, suddenly an unmarked black SUV lunged out from a nearby parking spot, flooring the gas and charging straight at me. The headlights were blinding, and the roar of the engine sounded especially harsh in the empty garage. "President Su, watch out." The 2 bodyguards yanked me behind a pillar. The SUV slammed into the spot where I had just been standing, cracking the concrete floor. After missing, the SUV immediately reversed, attempting to run me over again. Just then, The exits of the garage lit up with police lights, and a dozen police cars descended from all directions, surrounding the SUV as their sirens cut through the silence. People inside, listen. Turn off the engine and exit the vehicle immediately. Hands on your heads, otherwise we will take enforcement action. The police held megaphones and shouted sharply. The two men in the SUV, seeing they were surrounded by police, panicked instantly and tried to drive out, but the front and back were blocked by patrol cars, so they couldn't move at all. A dozen or so officers, some armed, closed in, yanked the car doors open, dragged the two men out, pinned them to the ground, and put handcuffs on them. I stepped out from behind the pillar and looked at the two men pinned to the ground. One of them was the person sent earlier by He Yangju to falsify my clinical trial data. A police officer walked up to me and said, "Dr. Su, are you okay?" "I'm fine, thank you." I shook my head and spoke. The police brought the two men to stand in front of me and demanded in harsh voices, "Speak, who sent you? What were you trying to do?" One of the men, already terrified, immediately began to confess. "It was He Yangju. He Yangju sent us. He gave us 500,000 to stage an accident, to crash into Dr. Su and kill her, and to destroy all the evidence she had. It's not our fault. We were just paid to do the job." The policeman nodded, took out a voice recorder, recorded his statement, and then found 2 machetes and gasoline in the SUV. They not only tried to run me down, they also tried to burn my car to destroy all the evidence. Caught red-handed, the evidence was ironclad that same night. The police issued a wanted reward notice, posting a nationwide manhunt for He Yangju on suspicion of intentional homicide, offering a reward of 100,000 yuan for information leading to him. He Yangju had completely become a hunted dog, a fugitive wanted across the internet. His photo and ID details spread everywhere online. Train stations, airports, hotels, and all public places were plastered with his wanted poster. He had nowhere to hide. Netizens exploded, angrily calling He Yangju deranged for daring to hire killers, demanding the police capture him quickly and bring him to justice. Lin Shi looked at the wanted notice and said with lingering fear, "Teacher Su, that was too close. He Yangju really is insane. He actually hired killers. Thankfully we reported it and set up the interception in advance. Otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable." I smiled and said nothing. I had long expected that He Yangju would go this far. A person like him is selfish to the extreme. Even if he dies, he would drag others down with him. He just didn't expect that every move he made was within my anticipation. He tried to kill me to silence me, but instead turned himself into a murderer wanted across the whole internet. His crime compounded, with no chance of redemption. Now his only option is to stow away out of the country and flee abroad. As for me, I had already cut off that route for him. I had reported all the routes and ports he might use to smuggle himself out to the border. Armed police and the Customs Anti-Smuggling Bureau, they have set an inescapable net across every border crossing. No matter where He Yangju runs, he cannot get away. What he owes me, what he owes my father, what he owes everyone he has hurt, soon it will all be paid back, item by item. After He Yangju was wanted across the whole internet, he vanished completely. The police used every investigative means to trace him, but found that he had seemingly evaporated from the face of the earth. No transaction records, no travel records, not even a phone turned on again. I knew he must be in hiding, trying to find a way to stow away out of the country. He could no longer stay in the country. Fleeing abroad was his only slim chance. The only route he could use to sneak across was the border crossings in the southwest. There the country borders a neighboring state. The mountain roads are rough, and many places lack border surveillance, making it the route smugglers most often take. I had long expected he would go that way, so I forwarded all his information and the routes he might use to the Southwest Border Armed Police Detachment and the Customs Anti-Smuggling Bureau. They had already set up a cordon across all the border crossings, just waiting for him to walk into it. Half a month later, I received a call from Captain Lee of the Border Armed Police Detachment. He told me they had spotted He Yangju in a small border town and that he had contacted the local smugglers. They planned to smuggle him out from an abandoned ferry crossing at dawn. 3 days later, I immediately flew to the southwest border with my lawyer. At 2 in the morning 3 days later, I and the soldiers from the border armed police lay in ambush near the abandoned warehouse at the border ferry crossing. The crossing sat by a boundary river, surrounded by dense woods. The abandoned warehouse was the rendezvous point arranged between the smugglers and the migrants. The night wind was strong, rustling the leaves loudly. Everything around was pitch black, with only a faint light inside the warehouse. Captain Lee watched the activity inside the warehouse through binoculars and spoke to me in a low voice. "Dr. Su, the targets are inside, 3 people in total, He Yangju and 2 smugglers. We've surrounded the entire warehouse. Anyone inside won't be able to escape." I nodded, tightened my grip on the binoculars, and watched the figures inside the warehouse. The familiar figure was He Yangju. He wore a black hoodie, his hair was messy, his beard unkempt, and he'd lost a lot of weight, completely stripped of his former confident bearing. Looking disheveled, his eyes full of vigilance and panic. He was negotiating with the 2 smugglers, handing a backpack of cash to them while talking rapidly, seemingly anxious to cross the river as soon as possible. Just as the 2 traffickers took the backpack and were about to bring him onto the boat, team leader Lee whispered into the radio, "Action." In an instant, dozens of border guard paramilitary soldiers lying in ambush around the area sprang forward, kicked open the warehouse door, and shouted sternly, "Don't move, border guard. Hands up, everyone." The 3 people inside the warehouse were frightened senseless. He Yangju spun around to run out the back door, but the rear was blocked by paramilitary soldiers as well. With the front and back sealed off, there was nowhere to escape. The 2 traffickers immediately raised their hands and surrendered, and were pinned to the ground by the soldiers. Seeing the soldiers closing in, He Yangju knew he couldn't get away. He surprisingly pulled a dagger from his chest, pressed it to his own throat, and screamed wildly, "Don't come near, all of you, stay back. If you come any closer, I'll die right here." The paramilitary soldiers halted at once, leveling their guns at him and shouting sternly, "Drop the knife. Put down your weapon immediately." At that moment, I walked slowly into the warehouse. When He Yangju saw me enter, his eyes turned instantly red and bloodshot. He stared at me fixedly, his gaze full of hatred and madness. "Su Qingyuan, it's you who did this to me. It's all your fault," he shouted hysterically, the dagger in his hand. Moving another fraction closer to his neck, cutting the skin so a bead of blood seeped out, I stood where I was, watching him, and said calmly, "He Yangju, put the knife down. You can't run away. Can't run away." He laughed, a crazed laugh. "Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me, Su Qingyuan. You ruined everything for me. I was supposed to be a billionaire chairman. If it weren't for you, how would I have ended up like this? You've brought yourself to this point entirely by your own doing." I looked at him and spoke each word slowly. "You manufactured and sold substandard drugs, harmed patients, leaked RAND data, caused my father's death, hired killers. There's no evil you haven't committed. You getting what you have today is the retribution you deserve." "Bah," He Yangju spat, his eyes wild. "Don't give me that moralizing, Su Qingyuan. I'll give you one last chance right now. Let them release me, or I'll die here this instant. I'll make you carry a life on your conscience. Whether you die or not has nothing to do with me." I looked at him and smiled faintly. "You think threatening me with your life will work? I don't care at all." I paused, then continued, "He Yangju, you think if you smuggle yourself out today you'll escape justice? Let me tell you, every escape route you had, I've sealed off. Your parents have handed all the evidence of your embezzlement and financial fraud to the police and cut ties with you. They won't give you another cent or lift a finger to help. The white moonlight you trusted most, Jiang Luoluo, has long ago taken the last of your money, fled abroad, and confessed all your crimes to the police. Right now she's overseas living off your money, carefree, while you sit here like a stray dog thinking about running. Your passport was already invalidated by the police. Even if you cross the border river into a neighboring country, their police will deport you back. No country will harbor a wanted man like you. He Yangju, you have nowhere left to run." With every sentence I spoke, his face paled further and the dagger in his hand trembled more. When I finished the last line, his psychological defenses completely collapsed. The dagger clattered to the ground, He slumped to the floor, covering his face. Wailing like a bereft dog, the armed police rushed forward, slapped handcuffs on him and hauled him up. As they dragged him out past me, he suddenly lifted his head, looked at me with eyes full of unwillingness and venom, and screamed furiously, "Su Qingyuan, I won't let you go. I won't let you go even as a ghost." I stared back coldly and enunciated, "He Yang Ju, rest assured, you won't get the chance to come back as a ghost. The life you took from my father, I'll make you pay for it in prison for the rest of your life." They escorted him out of the warehouse and shoved him into a police car. The siren blared, the vehicle drove away and vanished into the night. Captain Lee came up to me smiling and said, "Dr. Su, the suspect's caught. Don't worry, we'll safely escort him back and hand him over to the local police to be punished according to law." I nodded and bowed deeply to Captain Lee. "Thank you, Captain Lee. Thank you for your hard work. 5 years from the day my father had his accident. I had waited for this day for 5 long years. Now, the man who killed my father was finally in custody. He would soon face the full weight of the law, only he still didn't know why I had known all his moves so precisely, why I hated him so deeply that I intended to see him dead. Tomorrow, in the interrogation room, I would tell him the whole truth. I would make him know that I got close to him never to marry him, not for his money or status. I joined the GU family, stayed by his side, accepted his proposal, all for today, to avenge my father." He Yangju was escorted back to the local area and locked up in the detention center of the Municipal Public Security Bureau, because he was suspected of multiple criminal offenses and the case was serious. The police promptly completed their investigation, secured all the evidence, and prepared to transfer the case to the Procuratorate to initiate prosecution. Before the trial, I received a call from the detention center saying He Yangju wanted to see me, that he had something very important to tell me. I thought about it and agreed. I wanted him, in his final moments, to clearly understand exactly where he had failed in his life and why he had come to this point. The next day, I went to the Municipal Public Security Bureau's interrogation room with my lawyer. The interrogation room was bleakly lit, surrounded by walls on all sides, with only a small window. He Yangju sat in the interrogation chair, handcuffed, shackled, his hair streaked with grey, stubbled all over, looking so haggard he was unrecognizable compared to the once confident chairman. When he saw me enter, he suddenly lifted his head, bloodshot veins spread across his eyes as he stared at me. I sat in the chair opposite him, watching him, saying nothing. The interrogation room surveillance was on, recording audio and video the whole time. He Yangju stared at me for a full 30 seconds before speaking, his voice rasping like sandpaper. "Su Qingyuan, you came to see me because you still have feelings for me, don't you? You still love me, don't you?" Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. At this point, he actually thought I loved him. His arrogance really was ingrained in his bones. It wouldn't change even in death. I looked at him, shook my head, and said each word distinctly. "He Yangju, you're overthinking. I didn't come to see you today. I came to tell you that all the evidence of what you did back then has already been handed to the prosecutor's office. The case of you causing my father's death is ironclad. You can't run." His face darkened instantly. He gritted his teeth and said, "Su Qingyuan, I told you before, your father's death had nothing to do with me. He failed in his own research, his funding dried up, and he died of a heart attack. Don't try to throw your filth on me." "Is that so?" I smiled, raised a hand to signal my lawyer, and placed a stack of documents on the table in front of him. "He Yangju, take a look at this. This is the testimony left by the driver who used to drive you. He has already confessed that it was you who told him to secretly copy my father's core research data and sell it to President Wang of the rival company." I produced another file and continued, "These are the bank records between you and President Wang. He transferred 5 million to you as payment for leaking the data. There are also your phone call recordings. You told him yourself that if you got hold of the data and ruined Su Zhenbang, you could buy GU Corp's shares at a low price and become its chairman." I set a USB drive on the table. "This contains what you said while drunk to Jiang Luoluo. You told her in your own words that you deliberately leaked Su Zhenbang's research data back then, causing his research to fail, his funding to collapse, and forcing him to die of a heart attack so you could seize the opportunity to take over GU Corp. All of this was recorded by Jiang Luoluo herself, ironclad evidence. He Yangju stared at the documents on the table, his hands trembling uncontrollably, his face ashen, sweat pouring from his body. He knew this evidence was enough to send him to prison for life, even to the death penalty. He suddenly looked up at me, his eyes full of disbelief and deep despair. So from the beginning, when you approached me, joined GU Corp, accepted my proposal, and stayed with me, it wasn't because you loved me. Were you just pretending the whole time? You did it to investigate your father's cause of death, to take revenge on me. What else? I looked at him, my tone calm but every word cutting to the heart. He Yangju, did you really think I would fall in love with a ruthless, money-grubbing scumbag who steals others' research and would even harm people? I looked at him and said, word by word, my father was the founder of GU Corporation's medical division. He built GU from the ground up. It was the work of his whole life. You stole 10 years of his research to grab GU, sold it to a competitor, ruined everything he worked for, drove him to his death, then seized his company and turned his achievements into your cash cow. From the day he had the accident, I swore I would find out the truth, make you pay, and take back everything that belonged to my father. I spent 5 years getting into my father's alma mater, earning a PhD in biomedicine, developing my own patent, then joining GU so I could inch closer to you, make you think I was just a woman holed up in the lab, inexperienced in the world and dependent on your platform, so you'd lower your guard and agree to marry me. I watched you act all devoted and gentle in front of me, watched you cozy up with Jiang Luoluo, watched you do those illegal things. Bit by bit I collected your evidence, built my own team bit by bit, and set this trap bit by bit. The confession stunt on the trending searches and my breaking off the engagement with you weren't because I was jealous or angry, it was because I had already gathered all the evidence of your crimes. I didn't need to keep pretending, that was just the convenient excuse I used to close the net. My getting close to you and joining GU was never to marry you, never to love you, from beginning to end. It was all to avenge my father and take back everything that belonged to him. He Yangju sat in the interrogation chair. As he listened to my words, his whole body froze, his eyes wide as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He finally understood. He thought himself the hunter who controlled everything, thought I was the parasitic vine clinging to him. But he hadn't expected that from the start. He was the prey who had fallen into the trap. From beginning to end, I was playing him, using him, his deep affection, his arrogance, everything about him was merely a piece on my chessboard. He suddenly laughed, and as he laughed he began to cry. Tears mixed with snot streamed down his face, leaving him a mess. Su Qingyuan, you are so cruel. He looked at me, his voice full of despair. I treated you so well, I gave you money, gave you resources, the highest position. I even thought that after the company went public, I'd marry you and give you half of the GU family's shares. How could you do this to me? Treat you well? I smiled, my eyes cold as ice. He Yangju, the money and resources you gave me were all things I exchanged for with my own patents and technology. They were what I deserved. And everything you gave me is worthless compared to my father's life. You killed my father, destroyed the life's work he spent his whole life on. Do you think giving me these things can make up for that? I'll tell you, it can't. I looked at him and spoke each word slowly. What you owe my father, what you owe everyone you've hurt, I will make you repay item by item, principal and interest. Just then, the interrogation room door opened and staff from the prosecutor's office walked in, placing an indictment in front of He Yangju. He Yangju, you are suspected of intentional homicide, infringement of trade secrets, production and sale of substandard drugs, fraudulent issuance of securities, attempted intentional homicide, multiple charges. The Procuratorate has formally filed a public prosecution with the court. Here is the indictment. Take a look. At the end of the indictment, the sentencing recommendation was life imprisonment, lifelong deprivation of political rights, and confiscation of all personal property. He Yangju looked at the indictment, his hand trembled and the document fell to the floor. He completely broke down, shouting like a madman, "No, I won't plead guilty. Su Qingyuan framed me. She Ruined me. I won't plead guilty. 2 policemen entered, held him down, and pulled him up from the interrogation chair. They dragged him out as he struggled, screaming my name frantically, his eyes full of hatred and despair. I sat where I was, watching his retreating back as they dragged him out. Without the slightest ripple of emotion, "He Yangju, you have brought this upon yourself. You did evil and must pay the price. From the day you caused my father's death, your fate was already sealed." 3 months later, the court delivered a first-instance verdict in He Yangju's case. He Yangju was convicted of infringing trade secrets, producing and selling substandard medicine, fraudulent issuance of securities, intentional homicide, attempted, and obstructing drug administration. Multiple charges were combined for a cumulative sentence. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, deprived of his political rights for life, and had all his personal property confiscated. Jiang Luoluo, for her involvement in infringing trade secrets and harboring, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He Yangju appealed the verdict, but the appellate court dismissed his appeal and upheld the original judgment. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. That year I completed the Phase 2 and 3 clinical trials for the new drug. The trial data were outstanding. Compared with existing medicines, its efficacy improved by over 50% and side effects were significantly reduced, bringing hope of life to countless late-stage cancer patients. The National Medical Products Administration issued a drug registration certificate for my new drug and formally approved it for market release. The drug launch and the GU Family Medical Restructuring Ceremony were held at the International Convention Center. The weather was fine and sunny on the day of the launch, and the venue was packed. Leaders from the National Medical Products Administration, academicians from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, top experts in the industry, and hundreds of cancer patient representatives from across the country all attended. Reporters crowded every corner of the hall, and camera flashes lit up the place. I wore a black suit and stood on the stage holding a microphone. Speaking as the developer of the new drug and as the newly appointed chairman of the restructured GU Family Medical, thunderous applause broke out from the audience. I looked at everyone below, at those patient representatives whose eyes were full of hope and light, and I began to speak, my voice clear, carried by the sound system throughout the hall. Leaders, experts, and patient friends, hello, I am Su Qingyuan. Today is the day my world's first antitumor new drug is officially approved for market release, and it is also the day the restructuring of GU Family Medical is officially completed. Warm applause rose again from the audience. I paused and continued. I developed this drug for 8 full years. 8 years ago, my father, also a biomedical scientist, had a lifelong wish to develop an anti-tumor drug of our own so that Chinese patients could afford and have access to good medicine. Unfortunately, he did not live to see this day. Today, I have fulfilled his wish. This drug was completely independently developed by us Chinese. With globally owned independent intellectual property, its price will be far lower than imported drugs. We will make it affordable for every patient who needs it. At the same time, I hereby announce that we will establish a cancer patient relief fund, allocating 10% of the profits from the drug sales to the fund to provide free medication aid to impoverished cancer patients nationwide, so that they will not lose hope of living because of lack of money. As soon as I finished speaking, unending applause erupted from the audience. Many patient representatives wept, crying and applauding at the same time. A leader from the National Medical Products Administration came on stage and presented me with the drug registration certificate. Holding my hand, he smiled and said, "Dr. Su, thank you for making such a great contribution to our country's biomedicine and for bringing hope of life to countless patients." I smiled in thanks and accepted the certificate. At the end of the launch, I announced that the restructured GU Family Medical would be officially renamed Zhenbang Pharmaceuticals, named after my father. In the future, we will continue to focus deeply on biomedical research and develop more life-saving drugs. To protect the health of the Chinese people, the launch concluded successfully, and numerous pharmaceutical companies and investment institutions gathered around, seeking cooperation and to invest in our project. Many patient representatives came up to me, held my hand, and kept thanking me, saying I had given them the hope to live. Looking at their smiling faces, my heart was full of calm and gratitude. Father, did you see this? I did it. I took back the company that belonged to you, developed the drug you longed for, and saved countless patients. You can rest in peace now. After the launch, I returned to the company. Lin, she came into my office holding a thick envelope, her expression very complicated. Teacher Su, these were sent from the prison. They're letters from He Yangju, dozens of them. All repentance letters. He says he knows he was wrong, apologizes to you, apologizes to Mr. Su, begs your forgiveness, begs you to go see him. I looked at the thick envelope, didn't even open it, and handed it straight to Lin Shi, saying calmly, take them and destroy them all. Lin Shi was taken aback for a moment. Teacher Su, won't you read them? No need. I shook my head. His confessions are worthless. What he owes my father, what he owes those patients he hurt, cannot be erased by a few words of remorse. He should be in prison, spending the rest of his life repenting for the evils he committed. Lin Shi nodded, took the envelope, and turned to leave. I went to the office floor to ceiling window and watched the bustling traffic outside. The sunlight warmed me. He Yangju in prison must have seen today's press conference on TV. He must have seen me standing under the spotlight, radiant, fulfilling my father's wish, developing a life-saving new drug, becoming a legend in the industry. And he can only spend the rest of his life in the pitch-dark prison, living each day in repentance and despair. He kneels in his cell repenting, while I stand in the light saving lives. This is our final outcome. I picked up my father's photo from the desk, wiped the dust off, and smiled. Dad, rest assured I will carry your wish forward. I will develop more life-saving drugs and protect more people. My legend has only just begun. My life will always be bright and upright.